and this is not something I am scrambling to prepare for. I'm already prepared for it, but I want to help you be prepared for it as well. And so civil unrest, how do you prepare for that? The federal government is preparing for it. You can just go to the FEMA website and you can see how they're preparing for it. And so we ought to be prepared for it as American citizens as well. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, my name is Anthony, and here we talk about everything preparedness, training, and education. And today we're talking about a very serious, sober subject of potential civil unrest. I want to issue a disclaimer right up front. I am not predicting there will be any civil unrest in the very near future, and I do not desire any civil unrest. What I desire is to live a quiet and peaceful life, and you ought to as well. But we do have the potential risk for civil unrest, and I do believe that threat level is higher than it has previously been in the last 4 years, especially maybe in the last 8 years. The potential for civil unrest is greater than it has been in that time period, and I want to talk about that. And I want to break it down into two greater subjects, which is potential concerns and considerations for post-election civil unrest. I want to talk about those, where they might stem from, two different particular broad scenarios. And then I want to talk about the preparations that you need to make or you need to be considering from now out probably at least 60 days until we get into January, early January. And so that revolves around the election cycle and the peaceful transfer of power. But again, I want to make it clear right up front, I'm not predicting any civil unrest, so please don't read into that. It's just good to be prepared because we do live in a more volatile time right now, especially in this election cycle. So potential civil unrest, it can stem from one of two scenarios. And those scenarios are if he wins or if she wins. We're going to have two very different outcomes, but we'll have more alike outcomes with regard to potential civil unrest. And so that's what I'd like to talk about. If she wins and if he wins. By the way, if you just love freedom and you're a freedom-loving American and you want to support this channel, go grab you one of these cool t-shirts. That's all I'll say about that. You can check it out down in the description below. And before we get any further into it, let me know what you think about this subject down in the comments below. If you have a differing opinion, hey, this is America for now, and you're allowed to have that opinion. So let me know down in the comments below, what is the potential for civil unrest in America right now, and what are the preparations you are making and encouraging others to make? We learn from each other. That's what community is all about. And so I value your comments. I try to read all of them, and I try to respond to most of them as I can. And so put your thoughts down in the comments below and let me know. All right, so potential scenario number one is she wins. If she wins, we get 4 more years of what we have already realized in America. And one of the things that can cause potential civil unrest is economic issues. And so we are experiencing inflation like we've never experienced it before. I know you're feeling the crunch at the gas pump. You're feeling the crunch in your grocery bill at Walmart. You're feeling the crunch in your energy bills. And really, you're feeling the crunch all the way around the block, that your check at the end of the week does not go as far at the end of the month as you need it to go. And we're all feeling that. And if we go further down into that, that causes more and more stress levels. But as people are unable to afford things like groceries, they're unable to afford things like fuel, they're unable to afford things like entertainment. They're unable to afford the necessities of life, and then they're unable to definitely afford the conveniences of life. And when that happens, tensions run high, stress levels run high, desperate times end up into desperate measures, and that can equal potential civil unrest, especially in close quarters. And so a lot of this is going to pertain to you folks that are living in closer quarters in urban areas and city areas. You need to be prepared for potential civil unrest in those areas, and we're going to talk about how you can specifically prepare for that and what you need to do to be better prepared for it. But if she wins, definitely we are looking at more economic trouble. And that is a great potential for civil unrest. And so we need to be prepared for that. So an economic potential for civil unrest will be the first thing that I would point out. The second thing, if she wins, would be foreign enemies. And I don't mean foreign enemies on our soil. I don't believe that is a potential threat right now. But what I do mean is on the world stage right now. We have war going on in Israel, and we do have war going on in the Ukraine. And we have seen North Korea aiding Russia in Ukraine, and we do see the unrest in Israel and all the different players in that. And the U.S., whether you think right or wrong, I'm not going to get into that in this discussion, but the U.S. is intervening in those conflicts. And so as we intervene in those conflicts and then we get her as the president, that will cause our foreign enemies to look at us and try and hinder us from helping with that situation, or try to hinder us from intervening in that situation. And that can cause issues on the ground in America in the way of potential terrorists, potential terror threats, potential other threats with regard to other types of warfare, electronic warfare or cyber warfare, hacking into systems and large systems, hacking into the power grid, potentially the water and sewage supply. Stories we have seen in the past in other ways of foreign interference into our life in America. And so there is a potential for civil unrest in that regard. You may say, well, how is that going to happen? Well, if we lose power for any great length of time, you know that causes many, many, many issues. And when people lose power for a long time, they lose not only the conveniences of life, but the necessities of life, and they're unable to survive. And when they're unable to survive, that can quickly spiral down into civil unrest when people go out looking for ways to survive, or looking for something they don't have that somebody else might have. And we need to be prepared for that. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. How do you specifically prepare for situations like that? One other consideration that I thought of if she wins is the continued threat of domestic enemies, and those enemies on our soil. Our southern border is wide open, and we have a lot of bad actors that have come through that southern border that we know of. And then we have probably a whole host of bad actors that have come through that southern border that we don't know of. And those bad actors are not seeking the land of the free and the home of the brave for any good purpose. They are seeking to do more bad. And that can always erupt into civil unrest, and it can erupt into problems that will cause civil unrest in America. And so if you've been thinking along these same lines, those are the three things that I thought of if she wins. I'm sure there are others that I'm not covering. If you can think of more things that if she wins, what will happen and cause potential civil unrest, or other things you might be prepared for, put that down in the comments below. All right, the other broad category is if he wins. And if he wins, we can look forward to a different measure of civil unrest, or the potential for civil unrest. And I want to run through those thoughts that I've had based upon that. Again, if your thoughts differ, put those down in the comments below. But the first thing I thought of if he wins is kind of what like we saw in 2016, is that civil unrest to a greater level will probably erupt among the American citizens that voted and they did not vote for him. And they are very upset that he would get into office. We have never seen in the past the level of hostility and the attempts on his life like we have seen against this presidential candidate. And so people are upset with the idea that he would even get into office. And then when he does get into office, they would be even more upset. And so the potential for peaceful protests, rioting, or potential civil unrest, especially in the urban and city areas, would be very high, just the fact that he gets elected because they don't like him so much. And so that is the first thought that I had, is domestic civil unrest, just based upon the fact of that presidential candidate getting elected. The second greater potential for civil unrest would come kind of in a like way with her getting elected, with him getting elected from foreign enemies. And I don't mean that in the same way of on the global scale. I think if he gets elected, he's going to help with the global scale very quickly, and make known to our foreign enemies that the stuff in the Ukraine and the stuff in Israel needs to stop. But what will happen from our foreign enemies, I believe, in the way of distraction, kind of like happened in 2020, with something that was let loose on society from a foreign enemy, to cause a great distraction to that presidential campaign and to cause really chaos in America. If you remember just the toilet paper run because of that was let loose, we had lots of chaos. And I know I'm talking in code, but you know what I'm talking about. So foreign enemies would seek to cause chaos to delay the inevitable. In other words, if he gets elected and he starts tariffing and he starts shutting down the world stage with regard to wars and things like that, and starts to position America back to make America great again. I can't believe I said that, but make America great again. That's going to cause disturbances from our foreign enemies. They do not want that train to start rolling. They're doing very well right now, some of them getting paid very well by our tax dollars, and they don't want that to stop. And so they would try to hinder us here on the ground, give us something else to think about so they can continue on benefiting from our tax dollars. And I thought about that, and that is probably one of the greatest concerns if he gets elected, that we are unable to stop possible cyber attacks or possible other attacks on our soil that would cause us to be distracted. And I would not put that past the greatest potential of even something that would make 9/11 look small. I hope that is not the case, and we should pray that that is not the case, but I believe that is a real and potential situation that we might face in the near future if he gets elected. The other thing would be domestic enemies, and I mean that in the way of people on our soil that aren't necessarily American citizens, but the border has been wide open, and upon his inauguration into office and leading up into his inauguration into office, we would see civil unrest as a result of the potential for massive deportations that need to take place, and those people not wanting to leave, and those people being very paranoid, upset, or I shouldn't use the word paranoid, those people being very upset about the impending deportation that would come. And obviously the way that deportation would have to take place is that we would need to use law enforcement and military to actually gather those people together so that we could deport them back to their home countries. And that can cause civil unrest, both from people here in America who think it's wrong, who are American citizens, and then both from the people who are here in America illegally that are scared to leave and believe that they should not leave, and they're willing to risk civil unrest to do that, or potentially even get detained so that they can stay here even longer. And so those are the cases I thought of. Now the case concerning both of them, whatever the outcome is of the election, there's one situation or one potential for civil unrest that I thought about, is that peaceful transfer of power that we would want to see that would not happen. And we know in years past there was not a peaceful transfer of power. And so we saw a situation arise where there was civil unrest. Whether you think that was right or whether you think that is wrong, I'm not going to discuss it here, but it is a discussion for the future. You can discuss it down in the comments below if you would like to. Tell me whether you thought January 6th was right or wrong with regard to the peaceful transfer of power. But anyway, there always is that potential all the way up into early January that we would see potential civil unrest from that. So now that we've gotten those situations out of the way, that's what I think would cause potential civil unrest. Again, if I've missed something or didn't go over something, put that down in the comments below, what you would think would cause potential civil unrest. Now let's talk about being prepared for it. And I'm just listing several broad categories, but we want to be prepared for that, and you should in some measure have already been prepared for this, because we've seen it's coming for years now, and this is not something I am scrambling to prepare for. I'm already prepared for it, but I want to help you be prepared for it as well. And so civil unrest, how do you prepare for that? The federal government is preparing for it. You can just go to the FEMA website and you can see how they're preparing for it. And so we ought to be prepared for it as American citizens as well. One of the things you want to be prepared for is obviously civil unrest leads to violence, and violence can lead to it entering right into your sphere of influence. And so you want to be able to defend yourself. All the rest of your preparations make no sense unless you're prepared to defend yourself. And so if you're familiar with the term pew pew, you want to have some pew-pews on hand to defend yourself, defend your family, and defend those you love. And so you want to have ammunition on hand, and you want to have firearms on hand. If you haven't seen the video of the 3 guns that I think you should have on hand now, or that you should buy now, I'm going to link that down in the description below. You can check that video out to see what you need to be prepared for. But beyond firearms and ammunition to defend yourself, you're going to need food and water and obviously shelter. I don't think this is a bug out scenario that we would be approaching. I think it's a bug in scenario. However, I will preface that by saying if you live in an urban environment or you live in close quarters in the city, you want to be prepared to get out of there if you need to get out of there. And we'll talk about that in a minute with other preparations that you need to have. And so whether you're staying at home during civil unrest or whether you're going to leave your home because of civil unrest, you want food and water and some measure to defend yourself in the way of a firearm if that's possible. If not, there are alternative weapons. I'm not going to go down through a list. If you want to list something in the comments below, if you're not able to have a firearm in your situation, list the alternative measures of defense that you might have down in the comments below. But you're going to want to have food stored up for at least a couple months in preparation for civil unrest in the magnitude that we're talking about, and you definitely want to have water stored up enough for yourself and all of your family members for several months, or you want to have access to water. And then on top of that, for potential civil unrest, there's always a potential for violence, and so there's always a potential for getting hurt, and you want to have basic medical care on hand. You should always have that on hand because, you know, life throws things at us, especially us adventurous folks, that we can get hurt, bumps, bruises, and scrapes. But if we get into potential civil unrest and there is conflict, you're going to want to have greater medical. You're going to want to have the ability to deal with major blood loss in general, breathing issues and things like that. And so you want to have medical stuff on hand. If you hadn't seen the recent video, Guns and Ammo Aren't Enough, I'm going to post that down in the description below. And that goes through a methodical preparation for what we're talking about now. And it goes through items, 9 other things that you want to have on hand in addition to guns and ammo that you need to be prepared with. And you can see that video again down in the description below. I will link that, and you're going to want to view that video. This next preparation is helpful for everyone, but it's going to be more important for you in the urban environment, and that is a vehicle. And not just any vehicle. You want to have a vehicle that runs well. You want to have a vehicle that when you need it, you don't have to be jump starting it, or you don't have to be putting air in the tires, or you don't have to be fooling with fuel injectors or things like that that you normally would have time to mess around with that you just haven't gotten fixed. You want to be able to jump in your car and go when you need it to go. Me in particular, I know you've seen that I am building out a 2002 Toyota Land Cruiser. I want a vehicle that can not only get me out of Dodge, but get me out of Dodge with curbs and hills and other obstacles that I might need to go through or over to get out of the place I need to get out of, or to get into a place where I might not need to go get loved ones or friends or family members that can't get out of those places. And so I want a capable vehicle. That is another preparation that you need to consider, is having a capable vehicle. And then the last thing I'll mention that we saw in the hurricanes up in the Carolinas and even in Georgia that was helpful is communications. Cell towers went down. Shortwave radios weren't as effective as they thought. And then CB radios and ham radios, from what I understand it, they weren't plentiful enough because people think it's outdated technology. And so those weren't as helpful as some people thought they were. But what did happen is Starlink, Elon Musk parked a satellite over those areas and dropped off Starlinks so that people could communicate. And that proved to be absolutely helpful in keeping people connected. And so I live out in the middle of nowhere. I do have Starlink, and I would highly encourage you to have that form of communication, because I don't even really get very good cell signal out here, but what I can do is call over Wi-Fi because my Starlink signal is so good out here. And so that is the last thing I would mention to you, is communications, and specifically I would say Starlink. And sorry, it's not the last thing, but the last thing would be a power source of some sort. Again, in that other video, 9 things that you want to have in addition to guns and ammo, you can see that down in the description below. I have a bunch of little solar generators, battery power packs, big ones and small ones. And what I can do when the power goes out here, I can hook up my Starlink to that, and we have internet and we have reliable communication even when the power's down infinitely, because I can hook that up to solar panels and power that indefinitely as long as I have a little bit of sunshine. So those are the things you need to consider in preparing for potential civil unrest. I hope this video has been helpful to you. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I want to thank you for making the choice to defend yourself and those you love. As always, God bless you and yours.